Hey, what's up guys? This is Vincent, and in this video you're going to learn how to use the color grading panel in Lightroom Classic. As the name suggests, the color grading tool is used to change the color in an image to make it look more aesthetic or eye-pleasing, similar to how Hollywood movies have that Hollywood look to their videos. But anything that changes color, such as the color mixer, or the tone curve and its individual RGB channels, or even some of these sliders in the basic panel. Anything that changes color is considered color grading, but Lightroom Classic does have a dedicated color grading tool that targets the shadows, midtones, and highlights specifically using a color wheel. So right now I'm looking at this global color wheel which impacts the entire range of highlights, shadows, and midtones. And I'm going to demonstrate it on this picture that I took of southern Patagonia in Argentina. So for this color wheel, it has two circles. This outer circle that controls the hue, and you can also change the hue with this slider here, and then the inner circle that changes the hue and saturation. So for example, right now it's at a teal or cyan color, and if I want to change the hue to magenta, I would need to move this and slide it or rotate it around here. So with this inner circle, it impacts the hue and the saturation, and the further this circle is away from the center, the higher the saturation is, and if it's all the way at the center, the saturation is at 0. One thing you do got to be careful is, let's say I want to keep the hue at 224 and I just want to increase the saturation. You may accidentally adjust the hue and saturation at the same time. So to correct that, or to make sure you don't change the hue, you just need to click and hold on the inner circle until the line comes up, and then you can only change the saturation. Unless I pull away from that line, then I can change the hue as well. So now I'm just going to change this hue to a slight magenta or purplish color, and the luminance slider impacts the brightness values of the color. And that's pretty much it with how the color wheel works. I'm going to reset this global color wheel, but the preferred method of working with color grading is by targeting the shadows, midtones, and highlights individually. So if I go to this tri-color wheel, it shows the midtones here, it shows the shadows here, and the highlights here, and then I can adjust the luminance here. But my preference is these color wheels right here in the center, the shadows, midtones, and highlights. This is the best way to do color grading with the color grading panel, in my opinion. So let's say for this example, I want to change the highlights and the sky to give it a more teal or blue look. I'm going to change the saturation and the hue to about here on the color wheel. And let's see, that looks good. And now I'm going to go to the shadows and give it a more of an orange color, or I guess this is the orange and teal preset or look, as you can say, which is very common in photography or photo editing. But anyways, I'm going to give it an orange color to the shadows, and I'm just going to increase it slightly. No, I'm going a little bit more than that. I'll keep it at 50. So this is how it is. So the shadows is orangish color and the sky is a teal or bluish color. So if we look at the before and after, you can see the color grading is a little bit better, I think, the photo. The one thing about color grading is you have to do it very subtly or subtle. So if I decrease the saturation to about 30, that looks better on the shadows, and the highlights, decrease it a little bit more to about 40. Now this image looks a lot better with the color grading compared to the original image, which looks flat. So let's see the before, and this is the after. Now we have this blending slider. The blending slider impacts the crossover or the coverage of the RGB values or the RGB channel. So if I increase the blending, the mask or the mask in the background, it covers a broader range, and if I decrease it, it covers a lower range. And the best way to show you this example is by increasing the saturation to 100 here on the highlights, and increasing the shadows to 100 here. So if I increase the blending, you'll see a transition or change more of the RGB values because it's just picking up more highlights and shadows depending on what the RGB channel is. So if I decrease it, the image actually looks a lot better. So for the most part, when you're doing blending, you don't need to increase it. You can keep it at 50 or decrease it to make the image look better. What the blending really does is it gives it a better transition, but most of the time you don't need it because you're already targeting the shadows and highlights individually. You don't need like a broad transition of blending, like, or even below is better. And then we have this balance slider. The balance slider, it impacts the midtones and changes the range of the luminance value of where you're pushing it. So if I push it to the right, it's going to become more highlight section. So remember the highlights, I kept it at like a teal or a blue. So the image is going to become more highlighted. So the color is going to change to more blue or teal. And if I scroll it all the way to the left, it's going to have that more orange color. And as you can see, the sky has changed subtly as well. And that's how the color grading tool works. And I hope you guys know how to use it now. And the main thing to take away from this video when you're using color grading is just do subtle changes to make your image look more aesthetic. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe, and check out my photos on Instagram. And as always, live easy, sleep breezy, and stay lovely.